Right. So there are really three ways that giving advice or having advice as your default response, there are three ways that can go bad for you. The first is this, which is you're trying to solve the wrong problem because you get seduced into thinking that the first challenge that shows up is the real challenge. And honestly, it almost never is. I mean, unless it's the most basic of things. When somebody comes to you and goes, this is what's hard, it's their best guess, it's their first stab in the dark, it's an early hypothesis. But very rarely is the first challenge the actual challenge, the real challenge, the most important thing for you to
Mm-hmm.
try and solve and figure out. But even if it is, and let's say that somehow miraculously you or they have figured out what the essential thing is to figure out, the second problem with advice giving and having that as your default response is that your advice actually isn't nearly as good as you think it is. I mean, it feels good. We're wired with all these cognitive biases that make us think that our advice is awesome because it's, it's me. But honestly, it's filled with your biases. You think because you saw it once before, it's true again. Half the data has shifted. The little bit that is actually true and useful, you can look up on Google in a much more clear, articulate way than you've actually got to offer.
Mm-hmm.
So you just got to weigh up the fact that your advice actually isn't that great. And that means that quite a lot of the time, what's happening is you are offering up slightly crappy advice to solve the wrong problem,
Mm-hmm.
which it doesn't take much to figure out that that's just not a strong leadership stance.
Mm-hmm.
But we could just argue for the sake of it that somehow not only have you figured out what the real challenge is, you figured out the essential thing to solve, but you've also got just a stellar idea. I mean, it's just kick ass. You're just going, oh, it's genius. And it actually is. It's actually a really good idea. The third place you can go kind of wrong in advice giving is the insight that it just might not be the right act of leadership.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you're in that moment where you're like, I know what the problem is, and I know I've got a really good answer for this, you got this moment where you go, so what is the best outcome here? For me to give them the fast, good answer, and in doing so, set up a dynamic which says, you come to me for the answers. Don't try and figure this out yourself. My job is to help solve your problems for you. Or is it a more powerful piece to go, look, I might see if they can figure this out themselves because there's a good chance I'll have a decent answer. It might not even be as good as your answer, but it might be sufficient. It might be good enough.
Mm-hmm.
And you go, would it be a better outcome to have them come up with a good enough answer that says to them, this is your job. You're accountable and responsible for it. I've got your back, but I want you to figure this out. I want you to take this on. I want you to have the idea, own the idea. I want you to feel more creative and more self-sufficient and more autonomous and more competent and more confident. Because if you make that second choice, here's the benefit for you, that you actually have a team that is more self-sufficient, more autonomous, more likely focused on the stuff that really makes the difference. And what that means to you, no matter whether you're into coaching or not into coaching, is you get to work a little less hard, but have more impact in the work that you're doing. And you get to spend more time working on the big stuff that you're up to, the challenges that you're most excited by.